felt it would give us the best access to the strongest possible group of senior insurance decision makers.
InsurTech Insights is a must-do conference, I think, for the network that is built here.
Thank you all for coming to our esteemed panel this afternoon. I hope you all got to see Coach Primetime as well, so we weren't completely taken away from your Deion Sanders time, and hopefully some people will be spilling in after here. So our panel today, as just introduced, Embracing Innovation, How Insurers and Big Tech Can Collaborate. Very fortunate to have some very esteemed panelists here today that I'll introduce real quickly, and then we'll get right into the show. Quick admin, Slido is not available, so you can ignore that bottom right thing on your screen, and we'll do Q&A as we kind of go through the panel. We'll ask a few questions that were not prepared at all before the panel, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers. So starting on my left here, we have Bob Parisi. Bob is the head of cyber solutions for North America for Munich Re, both facultative and corporate. Prior to joining Munich Re, Robert was at Marsh for 15 years, serving as managing director and cyber product leader, where his responsibilities include advising clients on issues related to IP, tech, privacy, and cyber risks, as well as negotiating with carriers on terms and conditions. Welcome, Bob. To his right, we have Jeff Williams. Jeff is a director insurance industry for digital strategy with Microsoft, where he helps global insurers build next-generation capabilities to differentiate their business, elevate customer and agency experience, and streamline costs. Leveraging his extensive insurance sector knowledge and Microsoft's expansive cloud portfolio, he helps his clients envision new business models, products, and services. Welcome, Jeff.
Welcome. Thank you.
And to the right, we have Nico Stainfeld. Nico is a partner at Foundation Capital, focusing on fintech and insurtech, and based in their New York office. Nico began his career at Foundation before leaving and spending time in investment banking, corporate VC, and growth equity. He did a boomerang and returned to Foundation last year to become the firm's full-time partner in New York City. Welcome, Nico. And then last but not least, we have Asaf Lifshitz, who's the co-founder and CEO of Sayata, which is an online marketplace for SMB insurance, small medium business insurance, if you don't know what that acronym is, connecting insurance brokers and carriers. Prior to Sayata, Asaf worked in management consulting at BCG and in physics research. Welcome, Asaf. All right, so as we talked about, or as you see the title of the panel, it's around how insurers and big tech can collaborate. So we kind of wanted to start big and then go small. And really kind of maybe get an understanding of how each of these individuals, corporations, look at it from collaborating with the industry. So that's going to be our first question. How do you and your organization approach collaboration with different players in the ecosystems? Who are the key constituents that you collaborate with, and how? So we'll start with Robert from a reinsurer perspective and building ecosystems.
Sure. I thought I was sitting at the end of the panel, so I wasn't expecting to start. So we collaborate in a couple of ways. Munich Re has a variety of ways to interact with our client base, the SME space, the middle market space, and then the large space. I would say the biggest interaction is on the SME space. The large companies tend to want a more bespoke solution, but anything in the small space that reduces friction has been helpful. On the underwriting for larger accounts, we do interact with the insurtechs to find ways to get additional information. Cyber is an area that lacks actuarial data. So anything that allows us to be more transparent and touch the client in a way that gives us a deeper insight is really what we're looking for.
Great, thank you very much. And Jeffrey, from a big tech, from Microsoft's perspective, who are you looking to collaborate primarily with, and how do you collaborate with them?
Well, I think it's a good question, Stephen. Microsoft is a platform company, so the way we think about things is really about enabling, like, all of our customers. So we have retail customers, obviously, like people like you and me in the audience, and we also have insurance as customers, and we also have technology providers as customers, right? So the way we think about it is really on starting with the tech and using that technology, the platforms that we've developed, cloud capabilities, AI capabilities, to just help our customers do what they need to do better. So we're talking InsurTech, we're talking insurers here. They're a big part of our mission. I think about insurers, if we start there. I mean, my job, what I get paid to do is to work with some of the largest insurers on the planet to rethink insurance, what that means. We've heard a lot at this conference about embedded insurance, parametric insurance, modernization, things of that nature. These are all things that we're helping our customers with. If you look at the InsurTechs that we partner with, it's all about how do we enable them through our platforms. And we work closely with some of those InsurTechs to bring differentiation, bring new ways to do things directly into their platform or their applications to insurers. So we have a myriad ways that we go about this, but ultimately, I think the main point here I would say is that we really want to be regarded as a platform provider. We're not in the business of insurance. We're not a data company. We're specifically focusing on the technology and using that as a means to elevate experiences.
Not an insurance yet.
No. We're not going to go to insurance. That's not our strategy.
Just checking.
That's not our strategy. It's not something that we even are considering. It's a different business model. Our focus is on helping insurers just do their jobs better, collect data differently, right? Create new products and things of that nature. But we're not trying to be an insurance company.
That's great. You heard it here, folks. Microsoft is not becoming an insurance
Can I drop
company.
the mic on that one?
Nico, what's interesting, I know we talked about the boomerang experience, but I think you bring interesting perspective for both the portfolio companies and foundations portfolio and how you're advising them to engage with companies like Jeffery and Bob's, but also you come from investment and banking and the banking experience. So if you could maybe share how you're currently doing it for your portcos, as well as maybe just some best practices from the banking side that you might have seen that insurers can look at.
Yeah, my experience is obviously skewed less on the big tech part of the world and more on the kind of startup part of the world. I'd say, first of all, how can insurers and sort of tech collaborate? I mean, hopefully a lot and as soon as possible. We came out with a sort of blog post a few weeks ago, and people are probably familiar with this concept of the emperor has no clothes, right? Where sort of everybody kind of pretends like the emperor has clothes, but sort of nobody can really see it. And we titled the blog post, "The Emperor Has No Tech," and kind of in reference to carriers. I think, especially in this new world of AI, obviously Microsoft making a lot of work there. Carriers are I think even more than other parts of the financial services, the traditional financial services ecosystem, significantly behind in terms of sort of technology adoption. I always sort of go back to this statistic, kind of fun fact. JP Morgan Chase, largest bank here in the United States, as part of their kind of engineering and technology org, they employ 55,000 people that they call technologists. So that's data scientists, engineers. They have more software engineers than Google. The largest carrier by premium here in the United States is State Farm. So JP Morgan Chase has 55,000 just technologists. State Farm has 60,000 total employees. Not technologists, total employees. So they're not going to be able to sort of keep up with even in what we're seeing in traditional financial services. And it's not like I would call Chase the most kind of nimble and tech-forward, fintech in the world, right? And so we're especially excited about, I think, with things like AI and especially emerging risk, for example, like cyber in terms of your case, those sort of next-gen risks requiring that next-gen data underwriting, using AI in and around the organization, whether it's on the front end, kind of prospecting, the kind of core of underwriting, and then the sort of customer service post sort of sale process. We're really excited for carriers to actually kind of partner with some startups. Hopefully they're in our portfolio. Obviously would prefer that, but I think sort of there hasn't been that kind of nobody has yet gotten fired for buying IBM. Nobody's yet gotten fired for not kind of throwing the whole carrier organization into kind of tech partnerships with startups. I think that will start to change over the next kind of 2 to 3 to 5 years. So.
I've seen maybe 1 or 2 get fired for some bad decisions, but we'll save that for a beer conversation later. Asaf, you also bring it from a slightly different perspective from the startup world, so I'd be interested to hear how you're approaching it, who your key constituents are, how you're going about collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Oh, this is loud. I'd say that we have 3 types of partnerships. There's the broker side, I think less the focus of this panel, and then there's carrier side and tech side. So we definitely buy cloud services from Microsoft. Thank you. On the carrier side, for us, really the name of the game is finding the partners are a good fit for us, and that could mean two things, like either brokers are excited. Is there like
Can we turn Asaf's microphone down a little bit, please? I think it's echoing. Thank you.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Is this better?
I think so.
Do you want to switch?
Yeah,
Yeah,
switch.
right.
That's probably a good idea.
Okay. All right. Is this better? Okay. I'm hearing guesses. Anyway, so we, on the carrier side, the name of the game is really trying to find, in an efficient way, the right partner for us. Or right partner meaning that either would grow our top line, get more volume in our marketplace, or improve the Sayata economics, to be honest. Yeah, that's really the name of the game for us.
That's awesome. And if you're a carrier in the audience, are there any insurance carrier people in the audience? Okay. So you've got an ecosystem right here, right? So you've got cloud provider, you've got your tech platform, you've got your reinsurer, you've got some other portfolio companies, you've got a consultant that can pull it all together. So just as you look at these things, it's not certain times when it comes from collaboration. I know all these guys said it from a one-to-one basis, how their companies are looking to collaborate with the industry. But as you look at it, this is what a lot of it is about, is pulling different constituents together that bring different value and different parts of the puzzle together so you can really do the full piece. And I know all these folks have different elements of the platform that you can tap into, but there's really some real value of looking at it in a holistic perspective too. And so I encourage you to look at that as well. So Asaf, we'll start with you on this one. So we talked about how you collaborate. So what are some of the elements of successful collaboration? What are some of the critical success factors that you see for making it work?
I may borrow this again, or I keep switching here. Hopefully this. Apologies for the technical issues. Yeah, I'd say for us it's quick. It's efficient de-risking of the transaction or the partnership. What I mean by that is it's always very hard to know whether your counterparty really has appetite to transact, appetite even like in the pure insurance sense. Like we would have carriers that have sheets describing like their appetite, but when you actually come and quote it, they're not competitive or they don't return quotes at all. So there's many ways in which the transaction could fall through. And so what we have found as a successful process is to be creative and thoughtful. How do we stage a transaction as much as we can so that both sides get a better feeling for each other? Just to give a small example, we can integrate with a carrier via like a full-blown API integration. That's a big lift on both sides, and so they would need to give you like their resources. We would need to invest our from our dev team, etc. But you could run a few quotes through the system, not in an automatic way, so not as much value created for your broker partners, but still you get a sense for, does even the counterparty you're negotiating with have authority to transact, like even that at the basic level. So that I would say is what we have found to be the most helpful.
Yeah, those expectation settings up front and making sure that everyone knows what they need to do from both of their sides is huge. Nico, what are your thoughts?
This is probably super loud. Let's get the switch again.
These microphones were not supplied by big tech.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a good question. We certainly see this as a big challenge, even in sort of broader fintech and financial services investing. The sort of graveyard of fintech startups that have kind of gone down this road of, hey, I'm just going to go, bright-eyed, bushy-tail, try to sell to Citi and Bank of America and JP Morgan. That's a big kind of pile of sort of corpses. I think one of it is the challenge of going in with sort of unrealistic expectations around what that contracting process will look like. 24 months is probably warp speed to sell someone like a large bank. I think carriers are sort of a little bit faster, but it's an additionally a challenge that from the carrier or the bank side, I try to sort of explain this to my portfolio companies. Kind of people's willingness to continue to take calls and take time with you is sort of not necessarily correlated with their intention to ultimately invest or purchase or partner or whatever it is. And I think we're seeing this. I'm not trying to just like throw stones at carriers. We see this here as investors now, right? I mean, I've got plenty of portfolio companies that are Series A and B that, oh yeah, this investor and that is still trying to talk to me, and I'm like, I promise you, they're not doing Series Bs in this environment. And so I think it's the same challenge with some carriers, right? Going in, kind of setting milestones up front. What we've seen, especially for things like software platforms that are selling to carriers, have had success with the kind of land and expand strategy. And so, one of our portfolio companies is a company called Evolution IQ, which sells software for some of the large carriers here in the United States, working on short and long-term disability and workers' comp kind of claims resolution using AI for that. And I think a lot of companies sort of use land and expand as an excuse to sort of cover up kind of lower than desirable maybe ACVs or contract values. But when you can sort of land with a certain kind of friendly a business unit or friendly buyer within the organization, and start with whatever 100K, 200K, 300K contract, and then all of a sudden over 18 months prove your worth. You've already got the MSA in place. You've already gone through vendor DD. They're able to sort of expand quite dramatically into kind of solid 7-figure contracts. And so that I think is something that has worked in the past. But again, we've also seen this sort of daisy chain of like, hey, just one more pilot and then we're going to reach the promised land. And again, that sort of graveyard is pretty big. So
yeah, it's a tough balancing act, and you kind of it's that art and the science, right? So when you're talking with that potential carrier or insurer that you want to work with, like really seeing where they can flex and maybe just get an idea of like, well, if you've done pilots, like have you gone to scale? Or if you've gone into a part of the organization, has that expanded to other departments? I used to be on the carrier side, some people know, for about 10 years, and vendors that I bought and brought in the organization, I would say the same thing. I'm like, hey, just do this little thing, you do it well, we're going to get you more deals, right? But
yeah, it's interesting. Like one more point on that. Some of our portfolio companies have it's like this, carriers hate this one trick, but it actually really has meaningfully changed the outcome of the company, which is, as part of the pilots working with large carriers, adding a clause in there that just says like, hey, after the pilot's done, you have a 60, 45, 60, 90-day opt-out period to just, you said, hey, it's a pilot, right? It's kind of total opt-out clause. But if you don't, like the default is you become a customer. And even that sort of difference, and I know sort of probably some folks are resistant to that, but even that sort of what seems like a very small difference, like a sort of Netflix-style free trial where it just rolls you over because it has your credit card, has meaningfully changed the outcome of the business, where before they were having challenges where they would go in and say, hey, everything's great, the pilot's done, everybody's super happy, and then all of a sudden, like 45 days later, 60, 90 days later, you say, oh, great, like, is that contract still in red line on your side? And they say, what pilot? What are you talking about? I can't even remember you guys anymore. Or, you have somebody leave the organization, your champion might leave, move to a different role. And so that maybe is an option for some companies to consider, is just having a kind of Netflix-style rollover into a full, obviously with some opt-outs.
Yeah, and a slightly other variation on that too that I've seen working a lot too is like, hey, if you do this, it works well, that piece rolls into the main contract from a pricing standpoint. So you're not going to pay the pilot cost and then pay the enterprise cost. It's going to be all part of it. So, Jeffrey, I think it's interesting from your perspective because you've got kind of two levels. You have people coming onto the Microsoft platform, right, and then you have bringing that platform to the market. So, talk to us about critical success factors and how you make that work on both of those levels.
Yeah, it's really another good question. I think I would want to start before I answer that by just talking a little bit about like what I do at Microsoft. It's a big company, and there are tons of people that do different things, right? My role is more of a pre-sales function, so I work with customers to rethink like how they do business, and I let off talking about that. But what that really means is I leverage my really deep understanding of insurance sector issues. Work with customers, executives at insurance companies, to reimagine how those issues, how these problems translate into technology and how that technology solves their problems. So to answer your question about what does success look like for me in my role, I think what success looks like for me is if I'm able to work with a partner, a customer, it could be an insurer or it can be an insurtech, having a sit-down conversation with that customer, sorting out what they're trying to do first. I think that's the foremost, most important step in the process, is having a clearly defined problem that we're working towards together to solve. So let's say, for example, it's an insurance company and they're trying to solve the issue with CX, customer experience. Maybe there's, just hypothetically here, guys, maybe there's some application of generative AI that they're interested in.
You couldn't help yourself, could you?
But like sitting down with that customer and walking through what does that journey look like for that customer and how can they deploy generative AI capabilities to make that experience better is success for me because it's the first step. And then it becomes an iteration, right? We start talking a little bit more about some of the more complexities of like the technology, the processes that we need to design and engineer. And there is where I bring in other people from my teams, right? So engineers, other owners of unique experiences within Microsoft to make these solutions real for our customers. So it's an iterative iterative thing that we do at Microsoft, but my place in that is really the tip of the spear in really shaping the problem, working with customers to understand those problems and figure out how we can use our technology, maybe along with some of their resources too, to build unique innovation for their business. And that applies also to InsurTech, right?
I love that, and as you were talking, I'm thinking about my carrier reinsurer times and partners that came in that said to me, Stephen, what will success look like at the end of this rainbow for you when we're done with this? And then like I'd have to like sit back and I'd be like, because I could rattle off my problems for hours and if anyone wants to listen. But if I have to sit back and really think, what is success going to look like for me when this is all said and done, I really have to be clear about that. And that helps to paint the picture for good partners that can then bring the solutions to what I'm looking for.
And before you pass it back over, pass it along, I would say this one last point. When we think about innovation, it isn't something that just happens overnight. And oftentimes it's a process, right? When I think about where Microsoft is right now in the insurance space, we provide our customers with a couple of things that I think are differentiating. For one, we're able to help them with productivity type issues, making your staff more effective. I mean, and you guys know all these things. You probably use some of our tools, right? Word and all those things. But on the other side of
What's
it...
that again? Right.
I think I said Bing, actually, Bing.
Wait, that's yours? That's a great tool.
But on this other side of it, though, we also have this play at innovation, this longer-term innovation to help our customers really move the needle, right? So when we talk about things like open insurance, how do we make that real? If we talk about things like embedded insurance, how are we making this stuff real? And so those are also areas that we're really playing a big role, I think, in moving that conversation forward. And so to answer your question, what does success look like? It's about having the ecosystem together. We're solving a unique problem, and we're building the capabilities together. I think that's a measure of success for me. And we're doing some of that stuff now. I mean, I can't talk about it right now, obviously, because some things are more confidential. But we're doing some of these things now with our customers to really help them build these differentiating capabilities and products.
Confidential thing is Word 2.0, right?
Word 2.0, right? Yes.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey. And Bob, from your perspective as a reinsurer, obviously taking a different approach to all these. So what does success look like from both a reinsurer perspective as well as in your specific role as head of cyber?
So I'm going to just say, ditto to everything Jeffrey said. I've been in the insurance industry since 1989, which is a long time ago. And there, to also then kind of, with what Nico said, there's a graveyard, or at least, bodies littered across the road of technology solutions that came in to insurance companies and came in with a solution looking for our problem. There's often an attempt to come in as like, we've got this solution and we're going to find your problem, that it fits. There's all too often an attempt to try and not an attempt, but there is no recognition of maybe coming in and asking, well, what are your pain points? What are you doing? What do you need to do better? Because I would agree, technology is not the strong suit of most insurance companies, certainly not large insurance companies. Munich Re is obviously is wonderful. I'm talking about my predecessor employees. But it is not it's not their, that's not what they do. But it's what they have to do. But the technology companies don't often come in asking, how can we help? They come in here, this will help. And that often results in enormous implementation that falls flat 6 months later.
It's interesting because I don't know, for folks that have been meeting and networking throughout this conference, I've seen and been asked and asked myself more times than any other conference, what problem do you solve? So I'm hearing that like as I'm in the matchmaking hall, and before it was just like, tell me about yourself, right? What does this company do? What do you do? And now it's like, what problem do you solve? And if they can't say something that links back to that person's problem that they have, then they're done in 30 seconds. To your point too, I remember back in like 2016, 2017 when InsurTech was cropping up, and even on the reinsurer side, like, and I think there'd be some like executives that would take it, a little bit further. They'd be, hey, what problems do you have in your life? Well, it'd be like, well, I got gout, and my wife's pissed at me because I got home late last night, and I'm overeating, and it's like, no, like, stop kidding around. But I've seen a lot of those answers in the past, and I think people are getting more serious about like, hey, what are your biggest pain points? What are your biggest problems? And then if they can't solve them, just being like, hey, you know what? That's not where we play. But I've got a friend over here that does that, so being able to connect is really good.
Yeah, but I'll give you a real-world example from this conference. When you guys invited me to speak, from that time until today, literally as I left the office and get in a cab to come here, and because I counted, I got 47 emails from different companies, all asking me if I wanted to meet their CEO because he was in town or she was in town, and they had the solution to my problem. None of them had any idea what I was doing. I'm responsible for large single risk. That's what my job is now. None of them were dealing with what does it take to write insurance for Microsoft, for Bank of America, although none. But they all knew exactly that they had the solution that was going to be, the thing that changed my world. So I don't know that that's a mentality we're going to be able to strip out of the industry quickly.
No, you're absolutely right. They saw head of cyber Munich Re, and they said, got to talk to this guy, right? We'll pause real quick and see if there's any audience questions that anyone has burning before we get back to the non-regularly scheduled questions. Any questions from the audience for any of these guys? Yes, ma'am.
My company, I get inundated with your comments about Munich being inundated with people saying they have the solution for a problem they don't know whether it exists or not. And we've always tended to find solutions that need to solve our problems. I'm very interested that Jeffery from Microsoft is frightening for business owners to let people open up the hood, and you've got a lot of proprietary things, and you don't know whether or not you're confident, you come in and understand what you need. But I would think you would have a competitive advantage at Microsoft because we're already using, you're already embedded. People are using SharePoint and other products. Do you operate in Canada, and how does someone in the insurance space get connected with someone like you?
I could introduce you to Jeffery after.
You've got bigger fish to fry down here.
So are you asking, do we use the data that we're collecting from our...
No, I'm saying that we're inundated.
Yes.
Every day I open up my email, and I've got tech companies. I cannot keep up with it. It's like an avalanche, and it's growing exponentially every day. I have no idea who they are, and they're trying to put appointments in your calendar, and they'll give you like 5
Well, you know who I am now, so...
Yeah, I know you are. And so I have no idea who they are.
Yeah.
Why they should come in and take up my time. And they're offering you a solution and they don't even know if you've got a problem you're solving, whether they're the right people before it. So it's set avalanche proportions for me. And we have bought tech, like we've got programs where we put telematics in big programs. We're doing things, but it's on a very bespoke basis. And I'm probably a much smaller company than a lot of other people here, but we have underwriting management responsibility. And we know we need to move forward with time. AI is frightening too, and you need someone to demystify it. And I would think that this is like a commercial. You do have an advantage because of the fact that there's already existing relationships. You might be able to expand.
So is the question more so can Microsoft help partner with a company like yours to then help you sift through some of the technology and understand what's out there to say, yes, this is good.
My
not
answer
just-
to that
I
would be
just have to ask,
let's-
would you say that this is a pain point of yours? Being bombarded with emails? Sorry.
Everybody always wants to learn, and you don't want to be the person that's sort of, I guess, left behind. But you also don't want to be the person that thinks, the brand new website is going to change your life because it's not. So you have to find some middle ground where, there's been a lot of attempts where everybody thinks you're going to get it, the taxi industry getting rise out of business, and that's not. We have to partner more because there's a lot of knowledge base in companies that are already embedded, but we just want to get more efficient, reduce the pain points for our client, make better decisions faster, and those tools are available, but it's just so vast. I'm an insurance professional, but I know we need to integrate technology more, and there's a lot more we can do. But it's a very difficult minefield for the traditional insurers to navigate on the distribution side, but also the management responsibility. So I think this has been a wonderful panel because of that collaboration is more of the messaging as opposed to we're coming to destroy you on a search and destroy mission, and we're going to make you irrelevant, which is really the way technology introduced themselves to the insurance industry, which is, I don't think it was the right approach, but they were copying the likes of Uber and trying to say there was something different. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge in the industry. There's probably way too much data. Half of it's not being used very well. We need to be more refined about that and make sure we don't start making decisions that are based on disinformation because we now think ChatGPT is going to solve all the problems and we don't need human beings anymore. So that's a very difficult minefield for us to navigate, and there's just such a plethora of people that have products and services that they're bringing to us. Sifting through it is really hard.
I think that's a good thing for you all to chat about a little bit more after the panel because that's something that they can definitely help with. In addition to, Jeffrey made clear like Microsoft's not being or becoming an insurance company. I won't quote some of his competitors, but you can do some research. But there have been some big tech companies that have gone really aggressive in offering insurance products in places like the UK, healthcare in the US, and it hasn't worked. And because they realize insurance is hard, right? Like all of us that are here that are doing this, like we know, like there's a lot of technical knowledge that you need, not technical technology, but like technical underwriting, claims, all this stuff. And that whole coming to eat your lunch thing, I know we were talking about that 6-7 years ago in some panels, and it's still not happening. Maybe there's some recon people out there from some big tech companies that we're not seeing, but I don't see that happening anytime soon too. I know we're coming close on time, so I'm going to ask one question. We're going to go through with each of the panelists. If you could, from your current experience or past, I'll let you decide which of which, give us one example of a collaboration that went really well and maybe even better than expected, and one that maybe didn't. And Nico, we'll start with you.
Uh-oh. That's a good question. It's sort of even more than kind of maybe specific examples. I mean, I mentioned Evolution IQ, which has sort of more than kind of 10x the sort of initial ACV once they expand within, and they've had a lot of success. Again, that sort of strategy of making contracts a sort of default to production, and obviously with an opt-out, pilots default to production, 3-year contracts, that type of stuff. I think The places where we've seen sort of good teams and good products fail in their sort of partnership with carriers or selling to carriers or whatever it is this mentality of, if you build it, they will come, right? And so kind of everybody's always out there pitching us. We're seed stage investors, pitching us kind of the next better, faster, cheaper, this, that, and the other. And I think a lot of folks, especially when you're dealing with enterprise software and especially with dealing with the sales cycles of folks like large carriers and financials, the sort of burden of proof or the burden of ROI is sort of enormously high, not just in terms of the sort of direct ROI that, hey, is this going to be worth ripping out the other thing that we've got, and then this thing's got to be that much better, but really it has to be that much better to overcome the political capital and will of the existing solution. Oftentimes that's not just the political capital of a piece of software, but it's usually the political capital of people themselves, right? I mean, oftentimes I think feature, not a bug, right? That carriers have sort of been a little bit slower to adopt some of this stuff, and so a lot of carrier problems have been solved with just hordes of people somewhere. And there's sort of ways that for example, AI, right, is going to impact that significantly, but it's not just a sort of better, faster, cheaper solution. It really is about overcoming the will of, hey, the person who's a SVP in the org who stuck their neck out to bring on this platform, software solution 4 years ago that now is obsolete because of what you guys are doing with OpenAI. Like that's a really hard sell, right? And so we've had those kind of situations where, it's actually the person that was trying that had to buy it, the sort of software buyer, was the very person who their whole team was going to get disrupted by this AI platform, for example, and that guy's not buying it, right? And so obviously you might have to go around them, you have to go above them, whatever it is, but that's the biggest challenge that we've seen is this mentality of getting so, I think at the founder level, at the team level, getting so stuck up in their kind of ivory towers of, oh my God, this amazing, beautiful, perfect product that we've built, like people are going to come screaming and running, and Bob's not like running to those guys, right? If anything, they're trying to come to you, and then you're, I think rightfully, probably filtering a lot of that noise. So it takes a lot more than just a cool product or innovation.
Yeah, that's great. So Asaf, tell us how you have not been ivory tower and how you've been able to collaborate well.
Yeah, I'd say, so you asked for a good and a bad example. I'll start with a bad example without naming names. There's one carrier. We honestly, we did not do a good job of the vetting process. And so what ended up being is I think just in legal fees with the contract and all sorts of approval process. This is a non-US based carrier that we try to partner with. I think we all in probably spent just lawyer fees is in the tens of thousands of dollars possibly. And I think we wrote to this day 4 policies maybe with them, not fat policies, in the thousands of dollars. And so very nominal return on that investment. A recent good partnership would be Coterie. Give them a shout out. It's an InsurTech. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with them in a small commercial space. They're an API first company. And so they do API integrations pretty well. They're very established. And so that went very quickly. So that would be my examples.
Awesome. Thanks, Asaf.
I'm going to answer that one with the to be determined or TBD. I was going to ask you, can we come back next year to this conference and I answer that question for you?
Where's our panel? Where's our organizers?
And we definitely got another panelist back over here in the pink shirt. Yeah. All right, so the reason why I'm saying that, Stephen, is because you know my journey. I've been at Microsoft 1 year now. And we have some things in motion right now that I would love to come back and either talk about them as a success or a failure. So can we do that? Maybe talk to the event organizers.
I'm cool with that.
See if I can come back next year and we can talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing in underwriting and claims.
Emil, you heard it here.
Put the pressure on me to deliver something next.
Or not, and then you can share things that didn't work. So. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, but that's my answer.
Great, thanks, Jeff.
Next year.
Bob?
Yeah, Jeff just said he was doing underwriting. So just to be clear.
Hold up. Before you comment, let me go back. Let me rewind.
Underwriting.
Let me rewind. Yes.
Okay.
Assist in underwriting.
All right.
Thank you.
So with apologies to Jeff, I'm going to mention another company. It's only because I didn't know you yet. We have a partnership with Google Cloud that allows us to get information about their clients inside the firewall. So internal data that allows us to better underwrite as opposed to the normal, outside in and pen and paper exercise. So that's one that I would say is going very well, and it's also the way that the insurance community is learning to work with big tech in ways other than just here's a platform that allows your client to come and bind business. It's helping us solve a real problem. So that's a real example. And I'll name names: Munich Re and Google Cloud. The didn't go well. I'm not going to name names, but it was a implementation of a system that we were told was going to be the total customer experience, from quote to bind to policy issuance. Bob, and what it and insurance people tend to be very rule followers. You tell us that we have to use something, we immediately use it, and that's it. The trouble is, if it doesn't work, it goes bad very quickly. So what can bind large D&O policies is not going to work for highly regulated, admitted workers' comp, auto. So what you had was a system that got deployed, everyone trained on it, that then literally crashed and burned for multitudes of reasons that had to be completely stripped out of the company, and we had to start again. And that was because, for whatever reason, either the tech vendor, senior management, whoever, wasn't looking at what was going on a day-to-day basis. It wasn't Microsoft.
That's good. That's good. So as you all heard today, really good ways that all of these folks are collaborating with the industry. They've looked at it from a perspective of what to do and what not to do. They got some really good examples that have worked and not worked. So now is your opportunity to get to know them a little bit more after this panel, see if there's opportunities for collaboration, and keep in touch with all of us. So thank you all for your time. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, guys.